Hey guys, Mr. Maher here, and we're going to go over a couple slides of climate system and weather. And you often hear the words like climate and weather, but we sort of fail to realize the relationship between the two. So, since it's Lessons on Earth Day, we're going to look at what a climate system is. And why it's important for us to understand it. Okay, so it might be helpful for us to use sort of something that we know of, like a bicycle. Okay? Now, let's say you took that bicycle apart piece by piece by piece. It's not going to be very useful if it's not all in one big, nice bicycle put together. But when the pieces are assembled, even though there are no new pieces in the bicycle allows you to travel a great deal of distance. So if you think of a bicycle as a system, it has many parts it has to work together to produce something new. Climate systems are basically the same thing. It's made up of many different parts that include the Earth's waters, that include the clouds, the atmosphere, temperature, and they all work together to produce what we call weather. So what is this weather? Weather refers to the state of an atmosphere in a particular place and time. Weather occurs over short time periods like this week, yesterday, what's it like outside today. We can predict the weather really only a few days ahead because things just are too moving in the atmosphere. But we can predict the weather. So let me ask you a question. When we say weather, what do you really think about? Do you think about water, rain coming down? Do you think about the frozen water, which is snow or ice coming down? How about the wind? Do you think about winds? What about temperature? Do you think about temperature? What about bad weather, extreme weather, like tornadoes or hurricanes, things like that? Well, these are all terms we associate with weather. Hopefully you do too. So let's look at one little thing that what causes weather. And weather is what is happening in the climate system. And we already went over what climate system is: the interaction of the atmosphere, the biosphere, and other parts of the earth that determine weather at a particular time or place. Well, if we look at weather changes, they only involve a few days. By looking at this graph, okay, when we study climate, it requires long-term trends. Going all the way back from 1880 to somewhere in here today. Okay, but long-term climate changes are often, we look at 30 years, 50 years, 100 years. Just take a look at the x-axis, and it goes from 1880 to into the 2000s. Again, studying climate involves long-term trends. Now, here's a graph that relates the climate and weather. The x-axis is here. What do you see on the x-axis? Correct, you see months. What do you see on the y-axis? Temperature. And if you take a look, what's the general trend of the lines going from January to July? And then what's the trend going from July to December? Here, besides the thick red and blue lines, we have these fluctuating lines going up and down right here. And they say daily high and average high. So by looking at all the lines that are on this graph, what do you think the red and the blue lines represent? And what do the fluctuating red and blue lines? The thick red and thick blue lines represent climate. And the fluctuating lines, the red and the blue small lines here, represent weather. This is how we can relate climate and weather. If you look at the blue line right here of the daily, its trend is going up and then it comes back down. And the same thing with the temperatures here in the red. And it follows what the climate is. Okay, notice that the long-term averages here, it's about 30 years, I believe they use for this graph. And that climate is represented by the thick red, which are the highs, and the average lows. Each day or month that's in here is the smaller lines. And notice how they're not exactly like the climate, but they fluctuate within the trend that's shown in the climate. So if we take a look at this line right here, this year, whatever year that they're using right here, this average daily high was higher than what the climate type is. And if you really look at this and you really delve into here, whatever year this was that they're looking at, it looked like it was a warm year. Okay, because the highs were way above the average highs within the 30-year period that they're looking at. Now, why is the climate system so important? Well, because the system determines what the weather is. Okay, and we look at weather because it affects our daily lives. What are you going to wear outside today? What are you going to dress up in? Do I need a jacket? Can I wear shorts? Things like that. But then if you look at climate, the climate affects long-term decisions by humans. Like, what plants can we grow in this area? What animals are going to be here? So when climate changes and we get global warming, we are taking plants and we're taking animals out of their environment. Because if they like a cool climate and it starts to warm up, they're going to have to go somewhere else where it's cool for them. Thank you for watching.